Hello everybody, welcome to the Redmen TV and your uncensored match build-up ahead of Liverpool taking on Tottenham this weekend at Anfield. I mean, that is what the game is, but it's a hell of a lot more than that as well. They're the facts, but beyond that, yeah, there's a lot more significance to it, which we'll discuss in due course. To do it with me is Chris and Errol. Gentlemen, how are we?
Very good, sir, very good.
Happy? Really good. Yeah, man, buzzing.
Smiles on faces.
Really.
Smiles on faces.
I don't even want to play it down at this point.
Yeah,
no, I am fully ready.
The time for playing it down is long gone.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people, including myself, were like, "Oh, when can we say it? Are we allowed to say it?" Now, mate, we've been weeks. We've been basking in it for weeks at this point. Yeah, we're not live, and apologies for that. This is a pre-recorded episode of this. We don't normally do these pre-records. We do them live, but circumstances often dictate, and sometimes dictate that we need to. So I can only apologise. We're live a lot. You'll be seeing us. You'll be talking to us. Let's do normal procedure on this. Let's do Spurs like we always do. We'll keep it, keep it standard. We'll keep it in keeping with the season. It's got us this far, Chris. Yeah. Spurs. My first note on Tottenham says high risk, high reward, but what's the reward? And I think that's fair because I don't get it.
No, I don't either. I heard an interview with Eric Dyer, and he was saying about how Postecoglou just trained one way almost for the entire week. And I think as a player, it gets to a point when you've got to start questioning that, because when it's not working, when it's not changing, again, it just becomes a bit of a disaster in all parts, really. And when a team has had the amount of injuries that Tottenham have had, I do think you've got to start looking at that side a little bit more in terms of the training, because there's been a lot of muscle injuries as well. And the way that they just haven't adapted. I said it earlier in the season, I think it was before the semi-final first leg. I predicted a win, of course, it didn't go away that occasion. But I said at that point that I don't think Postecoglou is good enough tactically to actually adapt to those kind of situations, whether he needs to be a bit more secure, whether he can be a bit more expansive, although I don't know how much more expansive he can be with how
he's probably reached the limit of expansion.
Dangerous limits.
You can't get planning permission for any more expansion
unless you're just going to play football from the stands. No, but high risk, high reward. But I suppose if you are to say reward, it's possibly finishing 17th and getting into the Champions League at this stage.
That sounds absolutely crazy to me. And I think, to the point that you were saying there, the way that Postecoglou's come across is almost as if he's planned as if he's going to have the perfect season in terms of availability, fitness, fixtures, all of those things. And as soon as that's gone a little bit left field, he hasn't really responded. Well, look at the league table, it's shown he hasn't responded well enough because, as you mentioned, the adaptation to tweaking of the system, the personnel, he's never really found a consistent enough balance to really take Spurs back up the Premier League table. And I think ultimately, again, all sorts of managers have said a whole array of strange and mysterious things, and you wonder why they say it at the time.
Yeah.
But he kind of built this fox rod for his own back, in a sense, by saying second year I win stuff. So it's kind of been like a bad cloud hanging over his head all season. Okay, you got to a League Cup semi-final, we stuck in there because the league form weren't great. Then you go out of that, get knocked out of the FA Cup. Okay, right, you're not going to do anything in the Premier League. Everything now relies on you doing something in this Europa League in order to, as Dan said there, the big reward would be then going back into the Champions League. And whilst that's hanging over Spurs' heads, he's almost done himself a massive favour, because that's the saving grace that saved him a season. As a manager, if he probably doesn't say what he says at the beginning of the season as a caveat, say year 2 I win stuff, he'd have probably been like, well, we don't suspect that you're going to win anything, so you can go. Whereas they're all now holding on the hierarchy, holding on to the hope that actually, all right, you've got us this close and your training methods are working in one aspect. We're just going to double down on that. The Premier League to them is of absolutely no concern what happens right now.
No, it isn't, and that may well play into our hands come Sunday, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on, sort of how the game may well pan out. Just on Spurs, in terms of recent results, you could go back to the start of April, beaten by Chelsea, which would have stung, of course, beats Southampton, but Southampton, obviously to get through in the Europa League, which is massive, as you mentioned, that is kind of what saved his job up until this point. We'll talk in a moment about whether it will do in the fullness of time. Battered by Wolves 4-2, like that in isolation itself is just not good enough. There's a Forest result, there's the most recent one, obviously on Monday night, beating 2-1 at home. That can happen, but Chris, 4-2 away at Wolves. They're currently sat 16th in the Premier League. What is most alarming to me is scored 61, great, if that's your headline, but conceded 51 goals, mate. That's bad.
Yeah, it's horrendous. I'll always remember under Brendan Rodgers.
You was going to say, I knew you was going to say that. I was waiting for the comparison. I knew as soon as he said the goals that we could see, I was like, they're kind of Brendan Rodgers numbers, he's moving like
never 16th in Brendan's defence.
QI in it, like the quiz show is like there's a buzzer words, and if you do it, this big siren goes off. No, because that season wasn't it like 100 odd goals scored but 50 conceded.
Yeah,
you can't be successful. You can't be successful like that. And the goals in the Wolves game especially, how bad the goals that they conceded were. The Jed Spence own goal.
All the goals in that game, all 6 of them were pretty calamitous. But you're right, the Spurs one's concession. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Considering the nightmare they've had with goalkeepers this year, and Postecoglou again, he made a very big point about Vicario being a really big miss this season. In that Spurs game, the Jed Spence own goal, he punches onto Jed Spence and it goes in the back of the net. Romero, I've got to say, I don't care if he's a World Cup winner. I've never really held him in that high regard. For the Strand Larson goal, that's a terrible mistake for Nouri. And then, again, the Cunha goal just robs it off them and
littered with headers on it.
And then, again, going back to Vicario, the 2 on Monday night. Oh, my days. There's that much going on at the back for Spurs. It doesn't really matter what they do going forward because there's nothing that squad can do quality-wise going forward to make up for the absolute horror show that they've had at the back this
season. Deficiencies there, absolutely. And then you get Romero coming out, I think, last week saying he wants to move to a bigger club and so get European football. And you're thinking, mate, perform where you're at for a kick-off and then we'll talk about what's next. Do you know what I mean? Errol, Chris has said it there, really, but if you are heading into, if you're anybody, not just Liverpool, if you're anybody at the minute, you're looking at what Spurs have done and that sample size of goals conceded and going, well, we can get at these all day long.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. To be honest with you, there probably isn't a better team to play to go and actually tee up what is potentially going to be and wrap up the league ultimately, because their nearest, the dearest neighbours being Arsenal, they won't want to do them any favours psychologically in the back of their mind. They would much rather Liverpool win the league than Arsenal win the league. And for all the things that you have just mentioned in terms of their actual form and the quality that they've shown this year, it's not been good enough. So for us, it's almost like a perfect storm where you're like, that's the perfect level of opposition to go and get a massive 3 points against.
There's a certain irony in... You're totally right about the nearest and dearest element. Because if you remember the second to last game for Spurs last season when they hosted City,
Son's running through on goal.
And Ortega saves it. And the real irony of that, because Postecoglou was fuming after that game about the attitude of the stadium, saying, so what you're saying is that you'd rather us not get in the Champions League
to stop them from winning the
league. But then ironically, in some sort of butterfly effect, that has now led on to the possibility of Spurs winning a trophy and then getting back into the Champions League. It's just a crazy run of events. Really.
Just on the trophy element of it, you've alluded to the fact that that's what he said early season. Again, definitely made a rod for his own back on it, like Errol said earlier on. But let's live in the fact they do go on and do that. It's Bodo Glimt they play, isn't it? And then Bilbao or Manchester United in the final. Errol, I'll come to you on it first, mate. You speak to a lot of Spurs fans, I think it's fair to say, or certainly a number of them anyway, in the content world, and you have those discussions. Is this enough? Will that be enough to save his job?
Not from the Spurs fans that I speak to. They still...
What about your perspective then?
My perspective is... yes, because Tottenham don't win things. So by default, by the fact that it's almost the Moyes effect again. When Moyes won, I think with West Ham in the Conference League, I think at the time with the form and where he was at, the West Ham fans that I was speaking to at the time were very much, he has to win it. If he doesn't win it, he has to go. And then by the fact that he did win it, it was almost as if like, well, you can't bin him off. You haven't won a trophy in donkey's years. He's actually won you one. He's given you one of the best nights that you've probably had in our lifetime in terms of our generation. And I'm speaking to these lads and they're like, okay, I still want him going. I'm like, yeah, but realistically, your board aren't going to then just drop the axe on him after he's just been successful. I could almost envision something very similar for Postecoglou. And again, it comes down to his wants and his desires. If I could see a world where there's, I don't know if it is a little bit ironic, where fans have been wanting to push him out the door all season. He goes and gets a trophy and goes, thanks for the memories, catch us all later, and just does all mic drop at the end of the season, and he bows out because I don't think there's anybody chomping at the bit to go and take on the project of Spurs and trying to reinvigorate them into some serious team all of a sudden again. So I could see that happening. I see that's far more likely, him saying, told you what I'd do, I've done what I said I was going to do, and I'm off, as opposed to I've done it, I've won it, and they're like, right, we're going to give you a 2-year extension now, and we're going to give you another transfer budget to try and rectify and remedy things going into next season. I could see Postecoglou being a little bit of a sly arse and being like, thanks for the memories, lads, nice one, it's been good while it lasted.
And if he did do that, it's not a happy marriage, clearly, so that would make a lot of sense, but also he'd go with a little bit of reputation.
Exactly. He rescues his own personal
and maybe
manager.
get a gig somewhere else.
Yes.
You know, if you do go before the axe falls on you, you haven't been sacked, you haven't got that in your
Go
CV,
before
you know
push.
what I mean?
Yeah. Go before you push with a winner's medal round your neck and say, this is what I was working with, this is what we did in the league that season, but I still knew I was going to get us to semi-finals.
Mourinho would do that.
Conte would do that. Mourinho would do that. Do you know what I mean? It's like self-preservation. I'm thinking of brand Postecoglou over brand Spurs, and I've protected
Postecoglou. Has to be said. Has to be said.
It did.
Somebody has to say that. Let's quickly. Sorry, Chris. I'll get your take on the Ange in stay situation.
I'm the opposite. I think he'll go regardless. I really do. I just think it's that fragile at the moment. He wasn't even. He literally was fourth choice. And I know.
They had a 13-man shortlist at one point, didn't they? The season before?
They wanted Slot, didn't they?
Yeah. They like a year before. Yeah.
Well, look what happened with Nuno. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, how disastrous that was.
Crazy.
And even he literally said, look, I've never been first choice in my life, so it doesn't really affect him not being first. Which makes your heart weep for him. But I just think, look, I think they could have the most incredible night in the final. I think they could go on and win it. But I think the Moyes comparison is really interesting. And I just think the Spurs attitude is a level on from what West Ham fans feel. Because at least with Moyes, they were finding ways to win games. And it might not have been the best football, but at least results were there. And the injuries are a factor. Of course, they're a factor. But the lack of adapting and the lack of results, I think, just takes it a little bit further for Postecoglou.
Yeah.
So even if they do win the Europa League, I don't think he'll be Spurs manager next season. I'm not sure I'd be surprised if he will be, but I don't think he will be.
I'm inclined to agree with you, and it's interesting you raise the injury point there, because as it stands, they've only got 2 potential absences. It's Radu Dragosan and Heung-min Son, and Heung-min Son hasn't been Heung-min Son this season. Let's be honest, you know what I mean?
He's had his Mane season where the wheels fell off. The thing for me, though, is you say that the fans might want to have him out. But we've said there was a 13-man shortlist, there's been a 4-man shortlist, they've missed out on big targets that they've wanted to go in. I don't know another manager that's there. I think there was Scott Parker. I think that was the last little rumour. Is admired by Spurs at this moment in time. And maybe, Scott Parker might think, all right, I've done a great job at Burnley, seen a speech the other day, by the way, and it was a belt, and it looked like a proper moment for them, so great. Yeah. So that might be a bit of a tap on the shoulder. But in terms of those calibre, I think that those days of Spurs being able to retract that right here and now are gone. So it's almost, is it better the devil you know, especially if he's brought you some silverware, than gambling to go again with someone who isn't overly like really in love with the idea of being your next manager?
Because the dream of Pochettino's gone, because obviously he's not going to leave the USA before the World Cup, is he?
You
wouldn't imagine so.
That's
also true. Yeah,
beat by Canada and somebody else, like the Panama, I want to say it might have been.
Yeah, Panama beat them in the Nations League over there. Yeah.
American football knowledge is better than I thought, but yes, but I do wonder, just to finish on the Ange in or out point, Spurs fans will be looking at Bournemouth, Iraola, and what he's done there. They're looking at Fulham and Marco Silva and what he's doing there. The tune they're getting out of their respective squads and thinking, well, if they were with us in our squad, because that's the sort of level of manager. Because you're right, the Mourinho and Conte days, they probably have gone at the minute for Spurs. But somebody of that ilk makes sense.
Well, Iraola has coped with injuries this year as well.
Very well.
He's adapted and he's done brilliantly, and that shows that probably is kind of, again, with Spurs looking at it going, well, why can't our manager adapt
100%.
to injuries? 100%.
Well,
so
it's interesting on the injury point. Again, I mentioned the two that might miss this weekend. Son's more of a doubt than anything else. But I think the injury excuse was a very valid one at one point. It was, but I also think they should have adapted and dealt with it better. Yeah. But still, when you looked at the ridiculous list, you went, oh, fair play, that's grim. But that isn't the case anymore. That hasn't been the case for a few weeks, and yet still they're losing games of football. So it doesn't quite wash with me. And we will go to a quick advert in a moment. Before we do, we always do obviously a bit of a trivia question at this stage, and I've got two for you today. One's fun, and they're both fun. But
I was going to say one's serious.
No, one's pure fun, and one's in keeping with what we normally do here. So the first one, which is the fun one. If you were a WWE wrestler, it's a good way of starting a question, what would your walk-on song be? There's the first one. Okay, start thinking about that. Do feel free to throw these in the comments as well at home. And the second one is, Peter Crouch played for Liverpool and Tottenham, but, Chris, I'm looking at you here. How many goals did Peter Crouch score for Liverpool during his time with the club? I'll tell you how many appearances he made, 135 appearances. How many goals, Peter Crouch?
Okay.
See you in a minute. Hey everyone, a new month means just one thing. It means a new prize if you are a Legend subscriber on Redmen Plus. That's right, if you're already existing as a Legend, you're already in the hat, but there's still time to get over there and get involved. And not only Discord access, not only all the boss content, you will also be in the hat for an incredible prize this month. It's this signed retro Liverpool shirt, signed by the brilliant Skippy, Craig Johnson himself, the inventor of the Predator, midfield extraordinaire, never stop running. What a fella, what a story, and what a signature, by the way, as well. Get over to Redmen Plus, sign up as a Legend yearly or monthly, and you will get all the brilliant stuff that we do here, as well as a chance of winning that incredible piece of memorabilia. Take it easy. Hello everybody, welcome back to the Redmen Sea. You showed me age with the WWE. It should have been a darts walk-on song. I can only apologise, especially as the Premier League came to Liverpool this week, but here we are. Gentlemen, what would be your darts walk-on song, Errol? I think I might know yours, but tell me.
Well, yeah, because do you know what it is?
Dreams and Nightmares, Mikhail, because that's what you had.
No, so this is the other thing. So I was going to go with that, and I ended up going with 50 Cent's Many Men for me boxing walkout. So it's...
of course.
So in my mind.
But you had that for World in One City Awards night, I think about it.
Yes, that was... And we've done stuff like that. So, like, something that's really high energy, Joe.
Many men to shout.
But yeah, exactly. So if it was WWE and I'm going in this, someone's trying to take my head off. So it is Many Men wish death upon me. I'm like there. 50 Cent.
I was just trying to think of, like, I always had this situation where someone asks me about a song and every song I've ever listened to goes out.
Yeah.
I'll go with
Salisbury Hill.
Yeah.
Panicking.
Sweet Caroline.
No. I'll go with Wild Ones Flow Rider. Because I don't know why I heard it in the song. I heard it like in the mall the other day, and then I started humming it. He must have never even heard that song, so I cannot believe you haven't heard that song, so I'm going to go with that one.
What? Nice. Yeah. I don't hate it. Mine would be Disco Land, but the Jerry Cinnamon version. You ever heard that? Goes off. Or anything by the Cranberries, depend on the setting. My God. The second question, now you've all found that out about us. Crouchy, how many goals, Chris?
42.
I'm sorry. Right, I'm not even going to bother asking.
Has he nailed it?
He's nailed it.
Whoa!
What would you have said?
I would have said 53. So I was obviously the miles out, but like...
I have not moved from this sofa in that break.
Am I getting punked here? Am I getting... What?
What, lad? Did you know that, or was that just a guess?
I knew it was roughly in the 40 mark. It didn't help that he took 13 games to get off the mark, by the way. But I knew it was roughly in like the 1 in 3 category.
All right then, let's stick on the Crouchy theme momentarily. Do you ever remember his first goal? You mentioned the fact it took him a while. Wigan wasn't he? Do you remember the goal?
Like the massive deflection, and then the goalkeeper literally palms it over the line to give him.
Never his goal, that is it?
It's a 41.
I made up. I love Crouchy.
He didn't look back after that though, and that's what I like about Crouchy. He was like, once I get started, I ain't going to stop until I leave.
Because he had a pen save before that when Zenden scored a rebound in another game, but then that was
scored again in that game as well. Got 2 in that game. 42 goals is accurate. 23 assists, 135 appearances.
That's the first time that's happened. That's on the couch.
That's mad. Honest to God. for what it's worth, he scored 24 goals for Spurs in 93 appearances. Should have asked you, shouldn't I? In 93 appearances. 61 for Stoke, most prolific at Stoke City. He played a lot more games.
And who was his manager at Stoke? Who was the...
Pulis,
long balls, Route 1.
Rory Delap to Peter Crouch was a well-trodden path, I imagine, at that point. Sounds Crouchy. Love you. Okay, let's move on. Liverpool. Here we go. Let's do that as per injury news. Press conference this morning. Chris, I'll come to you, mate. Only really a Joe Gomez situation to address, I think, and closer and closer maybe the end of the season, which is nice, but other than that, clean bill of health, really.
Yeah, so Conor Bradley's getting closer and closer to 90 minutes. And then when asked about the potential for playing more regular minutes or more chances of 90 minutes, again, he highlighted the reason why Bradley hasn't in his Liverpool career is a certain Trent Alexander-Arnold. Yeah. But it's really interesting that Bradley has only played, because Mo Stewart brought this up in the press conference, 26 Premier League appearances. I would have said at least 40 for Bradley. But I know the injuries have played a part of that as well. It seems to be injuries for this entire show. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a coin toss in terms of who starts this weekend. Whether we look back in years to come and think, right, this could be such an iconic game for Liverpool. Do you want to remember the starting 11 in that game? Is that a factor?
About it.
Yeah, I can imagine you will. I think for what's happened with us this season in terms of the injuries, you made a really good point on the live we did the other night, how the backroom staff have managed throughout the course of the season, because maybe that's something that they have looked at prior to coming into the club to say, what has been, because as much as you can banter other fan bases, don't even have to be specific, you can banter other fan bases about the excuses that get made for not being where they would want to be. We've been there and we felt they've been very valid excuses or reasons or circumstances that have prevented us from getting as close to Premier League titles, Champions Leagues as possible. And in the midst of that, you'd be hard pressed to find a Liverpool fan really that breaks things down, that hasn't touched on injuries through certain courses of different seasons. And I think that has probably been one of the biggest coups for us this year, is the fact that, as you mentioned the other night, mate, our ability to have kept that core 13, 14, touching on 15 players fitter more often than not has been a massive advantage to us being in the position we're in right now. So it'll be interesting to see if that's something that they can build on, and it can be kind of their model, that we are able to keep really good footballers fit and avoid injuries. Don't get me wrong, you're always going to have those freak injuries throughout the course of the season you can't do anything about, but you don't want those training niggly injuries, you don't want those muscle injuries, you don't want like little silly innocuous ones that you could have just easily avoided. So I think it's massive at the moment that we've got that clean bill of health in terms of the Trent point, and looking at things, I can see why this would be the one where he starts Trent, but again, it's with the flip side of, all right, Trent will start, but Trent will do the 60 minutes this game, and then Bradley will finish and do the 30 minutes, and we'll finish on a high. And obviously, as I say, from a Trent perspective, you can sit there, you can have started, you'll have been in that 11 to start, but you can sit there for 30 minutes while everybody's singing, we're going to win the league, Liverpool top, and you could sit there and take it in and process. You know, you can think about your future in the nicest possible way. You can think about your future while
on your decisions.
That to me,
do I really want to leave this?
Exactly. Let the Sky cameras pant him 3, 4, 5 times while all that's going on. I've got no problem with it, because I'd rather it be that way round than him coming on and having to do another madness.
That's really interesting. That's really, really interesting. And I want to talk about that some more. Just on the injury point, you're right to mention Ruben Peters is the guy credited.
Yeah, you mentioned it. I couldn't think of it before. You were spot on.
Previously, he's worked with Slot before, obviously a Feyenoord, and that was one of the. I think that's actually one of the things that sort of like it would have been Michael Edwards. Sort of earmarked as one of the key reasons, the key indicators why Slot was chosen. There's lots of reasons, obviously, but that was a big sort of positive. Let's do it. Obviously, Alisson Becker starts the game, clearly. The significance of it is something I did want to talk about, and the significance of the starting 11 and the decisions there. But I think mostly Arne Slot, he kind of got asked this morning as well, because he used the word responsibility a lot when it came to sort of the game and needing to do a proper job and laser focus on it. I think, generally speaking, he will just pick whatever he sees as the best 11. However, that point, about the right back because there's a 60-30 dilemma one way round because of fitness, let alone anything else.
But you've got the guys of fitness to play into it, so just go into your bag, utilise it.
That, Chris, what's the best way round? Let's forget about the fit. Let's say they're both as equally capable as each other as doing the 60 or the 30. What's the best play there?
I feel like the one you've said is the right way about it because I don't know whether it would play any part whatsoever in Trent Alexander-Arnold sitting there and taking it in for the final 25-30 minutes. I don't know. I think I feel like nothing will change his mind at this point. But if that is something that could potentially, I think it's definitely worth considering because
experimenting with it,
you got nothing to lose at this point. Like it's the Klopp and Salah thing from last year without the handbags.
The West Ham,
without the handbags of like. I'm not going to win the league. I don't need you to start. I'm going at the end of the season. Like I don't need you to start this game. I'm just more focused on what the team are doing than opposed to appeasing the man. And it could be the same sort of consideration for Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's like, but once the game's wrapped up and we're in control of the game, I've got a player that is going to be here next season that I'm focusing on getting fit. And that's my priority. You are an afterthought to that. And if you've made your... Slot knows what's happening. If you've made your decision, I don't feel any way of then taking you off and then you just sit as a fan. Do you know what I mean? You be a fan, you sit there, enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the spectacle, enjoy the moment, and just have to live from that. I am viewing it now as opposed to living and breathing it because this is my transition. And I just think that to me is it's kind of... That's what happens when you make your bed. You've got to lie in it, and that's the type of decision that happens for me. You lie in your bed. If it's the other way around and you want to finish and you want to be on the pitch with your top at the end and you want to feel exhausted that you've got it over the line and all the rest of it, mate, that's the buy-in from the people that are going to be here next season because I want them to have that feeling to be able to say, I want to go again.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Okay.
What would you do? What would you have?
Yeah.
I think I'm with you now.
Yeah,
I think I'm with you now.
I think Slot's made a habit this season of just choosing his best team.
Yeah, I think that's always fair.
And if they're both fit,
that's what I mean. Trent
Alexander-Arnold is better than Conor Bradley at this moment in time. So,
he said as much this morning, didn't he? Let's be honest. He said Conor Bradley's on his way there. He needs to play it back to back and do it consistently. But Trent's the one.
One thing, this might be harsh. I know Tsimikas has started the last two, but I'd be wanting Robertson to start this week.
Well, that's why.
I think to play into the emotion of it as well. I don't think Tsimikas is going to be here next season. I think Robertson will be in terms of that secondary left back because I think that's the right progression for that position. And it's nothing against Tsimikas at all. I think Tsimikas has got some amazing moments in a Liverpool shirt. But Robertson's been asked a couple of times recently, has he thought about what Sunday will be like, considering that they didn't have the fans there in 2020? And of course, you almost expect him to say no. It's our choice whether we believe him or not. So I just think all the players that were unable to have that moment in 2020, while still taking the game seriously, and I do think Robertson's still the best left back at the club anyway, I think been able to have that emotion, because as you say, because he could take Robertson off anyway, and Robertson's pretty much a Liverpool fan at this point anyway. So like, again, he could then have that final 20 minutes or whatever on the bench. But I think to start the game, I'm 100% Robertson.
Yeah, okay, it's interesting. I don't hate that at all. In fact, I'm probably on board with it, and I would have been whichever way you want to come at that. I think Robertson's the chosen left back for me. Errol, don't know about you.
Yeah, no, he is. As I say, he's still, for all the reasons you said, he's still very much the most senior one, the one that's been there, done it. He's got the experience, and then again for getting it over the line. As I say, if you're going to look back at that starting 11, that to me is on Liverpool's best day. That back five, Canate, Van Dijk, Robbo, Trent, Alisson, on our best day, that's who's going to be in it. So when you look back at the 11 the first 11 that was, the Liverpool 11 that won number 20, that's the back five for me, and it'll always be, do you know what I mean? I know Tsimikas has played some invaluable moments within it, and they've all played a part, but for where this iteration of the squad is, that's the defence that's won us the league title for me.
100% agree with that, and in keeping with what you just said there, the midfield that you could argue has won us the league title is probably Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, and McAllister.
Facts.
Now again, Curtis Jones has played his part, more than played his part. But I think if you are going to be sort of pressured into saying the three, Chris, it's probably them.
There's not really that much of a reason to not, is there? I know Curtis seemed frustrated at the end of Leicester, but ultimately the three that have played such a mammoth part, and I think that the spine of the team, I was saying this week, Alisson, Van Dijk, Gravenberch, Salah, you could even put McAllister in there really in terms of the ones that really haven't had absences, but that's just been such a revolutionary part of this season, and I do think there should be a midfield addition or two in the summer, but what those three have done this year, you can't deny it.
And I'd go one step further. If Slot wants to really really go gangster on Trent, you bring Jones on at like
right back.
No. I mean,
that really would be.
That would be really staring it pot. But no, you bring him on into the mix, 65, 70 minutes played, and everybody shouting the scouts in our team for Jones. And like that would literally, and Jones then's on the pitch at the full time whistle, feeling elation, feeling knackered.
Yeah.
And to watch that, like, you make your bed. You know what I mean? Like that would send, if that was me, that would send shivers down my spine. It's like if you were, if the lad turned around and was like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, a load of content to do this, but we're just gonna pin you off and we're gonna just put someone. I'd be like, okay.
The best content you've ever done is like Red Weekend on stage with Dalglish's, but you're right, that's it. Yeah,
like it sends shivers up your spine watching that, Joe, as a professional thing. So I can only imagine how Trent would feel looking at the heir to the Scouse throne, or like being there, soaking up, knowing, hey, I ain't going nowhere in the summer, so I'm gonna absolutely live my best life for the next however many weeks and months. With no issues. I just think there'd be something in that.
And listen, it's a very real possibility, because the right back situation we already discussed could easily go the way we've said.
Yeah.
And also Curtis Jones could easily come into that midfield, because that's what's happened all season long, more or less. Okay, let's move into the front line.
It's just funny that there's narratives now.
What
we just assumed is that's what works for the squad. All of a sudden, there's these little side narratives and side stories that will mean more to us as fans, and we can look into it in many different ways. But ultimately, it just could be a circumstance.
Oh, there'll be football dictated decisions.
He
only ever makes football decisions. Honestly, he won't only be thinking about the things that we're discussing here, but in a roundabout way, he's playing into that. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's mad. Front line, as I mentioned, Mo Salah. Moving on. There is a bit of a conversation the other two, really, I guess, Errol. Now, Honor was asked about Darwin Núñez and a potential clause as well this morning. Now, he pushed back on that a little bit, I think it's fair to say. Basically saying,
so he should as well.
He basically said what I've just said there, actually. Everything he does is based around football decisions, clearly. And he actually sort of questioned the validity of the actual reporting as well, it seemed like. You know what I mean? Which was interesting to journalists. But still, I don't know whether Darwin's even in line for a start here.
I don't.
But let's use it as Diogo, Diaz and Cody Gakpo.
Yeah,
we need two of them, three, Errol. What are we doing?
Diaz and Jota.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that's, again, when you go back and like look at Liverpool's best 11, we might have disagreements or we might have arguments about who in the front line is probably the best fit for what we want or gives us the most firepower. Ultimately, if we look at it on paper and think that's definitely going to give us our firepower, it hasn't really worked out like that. I think we've found a little bit wanting in terms of some games. Diaz has been electric, some games he's tailed off. Jota's not had the season that we'd expect from him, but we know on the whole where his quality levels is. So we find ways to justify what we'd consider to be the firepower ultimately. Whereas I think if you just look at it on paper of what Slot's considered, I think that Sunday is going to be the day where he just wants to have that Liverpool 11 as if it was. Everything's gone. The way I said about Poch before, planning for perfection. This is me now planning. I've got the full squad's full strength team, no injuries. I'm going to put out the 11 that I would have if it was a Champions League final, they would be starting for me, and they're going to be the team to start to then bring it over the line for me. And I've got the luxury of having the Gakpos or the Nunez's to throw into the mix, because that adds us extra firepower if we then require it at some point.
Absolutely. And it goes back to what we said at the top of this segment, really, in terms of like having the ability to pick almost everyone at this stage of the season is relatively unheard of.
It's
really.
But it just means he's only going to pick his strongest. Like what he would go with is ideal.
Well, that's it. Is it? I was going to come to you, Chris, and Errol's right, because I think in terms of form, that probably is the front line. But I don't know whether that's his preference. Because I think Gakpo might be his preference.
I was going to say that's a really interesting point you make about if it's a Champions League final and it be in the starting 11. Because if it was a Champions League final tomorrow, in my head, I'd be wanting some kind of way to get Gakpo in. And I know he's not been amazing recently. And I know ever since the injury, he hasn't really got back to the heights that he was at. But I think it does, just looking slightly forward, it does emphasise the need for a number 9, at least one number 9 this summer. And we all know that. And I think it's very obvious that at least one number 9 will come in. And I just wonder, in my head, I'm thinking like Diaz at the 9, Gakpo on the left. But again, I don't think that project has worked particularly as well as some people might think it has this season. But
we never have talked about it.
We've had conversations.
But I think if
there's ever a back line that's going to work brilliant against the Spurs. So if you are going to roll the dice and just say, actually, Gakpo's me preference on that left wing, kind of almost sacrifice a little bit of what Diaz does to squeeze him in against the Spurs back line, mate.
We've seen it.
Well, against the Spurs back line, that if
was it 5? Was it 5?
6-2, wasn't it?
If Postecoglou was anything about him for Sunday, just a quick one, Van de Ven and Romero were nowhere near that starting 11, by the way. But yeah, I think you can probably play around with it because of the fragility of them. But I'd find a way personally for Gakpo to get in there, but I understand if it's Diaz and Jota.
Interesting. Yeah, I just, again, to come back to what we touched upon there in terms of Diaz just causing other problems, because I don't think the experiments work particularly well either, truth be told. I don't like it, really.
We go back to the hat-trick against Leverkusen, 2 of them were from the left anyway after Nunez came on.
And listen, one game, and there'd be a couple of examples, of course, where people will point to and say, well, what about that? And that's fine, the Spurs one, mate. But it's not enough for me. And the lack of a presence in the box and a proper 9 has been a real issue at times this season. Look at us with all our problems. Sat top of the Premier League, about to win the thing. But still, the point remains.
Doesn't that just show the potential that we're seeing?
Exactly.
The potential that we're seeing, if we get this summer right,
there's
it's
room for
scary how good this squad can get.
And also, listen, let's have it right. Like, as much as the Premier League, is the be-all and end-all, certainly for this season, in my opinion, I want to be still in the Champions League. Like, I don't like the fact we're not in the Champions League anymore. You know what I mean? I wanted to have won the Carabao Cup a few weeks ago. I'd still like to be in the FA Cup semi-finals this week. You know what I mean? That's where I'm looking at. That's where the room for improvement is, and that's where the not the finished article is. It
didn't properly hit home until I saw the fixtures coming up and seeing PSG Villa, and thinking, really would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, but again, I'm not going to complain too much.
No.
Okay, so I think have we settled on a front line? I don't know if we settled on a front line.
I went with what I think is going to be.
So I've got the deciding vote, because you've gone Gakpo Diaz.
I've
got
Gakpo Diaz, yeah.
I'm going to go Gakpo Diaz.
So?
I'm going to go Gakpo Diaz, yeah.
I'm not mad at that either.
No.
Because I don't think Jota's been great. No. I just think
there's not an outstanding candidate to do the 9.
No, there's not. But at the same time, I just think Slot seems to really trust that Jota's still got it. And I don't not trust that either, by the way. It's just the fact that I'm like, there's the sample size of games to go and show you've got it. You might have 1 or 2 good games between now and the end of the season. That's still going to leave a big question mark over my head. Whereas if in the last 10 he would have went on a run, I would have been more like, all right, I see what Slot's been trusting, and I can run with it.
Preaching to the choir, because I have had my reservations about that for a while, and then it was his Derby performance and goal that made me think, okay, let's see that now. But it hasn't.
Yeah.
And you're right. If he does it once or twice, I'm still not sure that's enough.
Because even the one just before the Trent goal last week when he hits the bar, that's the kind of Jota chance that you'd see him go.
We're not talking about that because Trent scores. But you are right, though. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, interesting, really interesting. Yeah, we'll go with Diaz and Gakpo as our preference, maybe because I think the Spurs' weaknesses and the vulnerabilities will be exposed even more with that. And Szoboszlai had a field day against them as well with that. So we've gone with Alisson Beckham goal. Yep. Trent, I'm going to let him stew later on. Ibu and Verge, Andy Robertson.
Stewing a bit of scalp.
We've got the midfield three of Gravenberch, McAllister and Dom Szoboszlai, and we've got Salah, Diaz and Gakpo up top. Do leave your starting 11s in the comments as well. I need to get the other Premier League fixtures. Who else is playing this weekend? Anyone
Doesn't
know?
matter. Honestly,
there's so little. It's on the screen.
Exactly, like genuinely.
I will do that.
What everybody else does is of no concern. The one weekend of the season, nobody else's fixtures
little
matter.
Attention have I paid to it that it wasn't even part of my thinking. But here we are.
Cup semi-final.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that's Villa.
It's Villa,
Palace, Villa, and Forest.
Forest City.
Yeah.
Come on. Probably Palace.
Anyone but City, to be
basically.
honest.
I want Villa to win the FA Cup. I've already said that.
I like it.
I've got a few Mrs. Family support Villa, so yeah, I'll give them the FA Cup.
And if it means Morgan Rogers can leave, then that's fine by me.
Yeah.
Chelsea, Everton, 12:30 Saturday. We've got Wolves, Leicester thereafter. Oh, why is that? That's just, terrible. Newcastle, Ipswich, Brighton, West Ham, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Man United. Man United are going to get battered by Bournemouth.
Mauled. Absolutely mauled.
Very similar situation to Spurs. Why would you be starting anybody that will start the semi-final?
Also
especially against Bilbao. Bilbao meant to be a bit of a dogged team this season, so
and also the finals at their ground.
Bilbao. The motivation,
the incentive is absolutely huge. It's crazy. Crazy. Okay, start thinking about your score predictions. But again, as is often the way with me, I'm going score predictions and dream scenario match winner. You know what I mean? So it's 1-1. I'll say it's 1-1. 5 minutes ago. Who's that guy? Wait. We got score predictions. So we do score prediction will be 3-0. But then I'm also going to ask you.
Have you seen a very popular bet that's been going around on social media in the last day or so? So this fella to my right hand side with the medal around his neck, Mo Salah. Mo Salah score and get booked.
Oh yeah,
it's a very popular bet that's been going around 100% on social media.
Yeah, it's a good show.
So I'm gonna do a revisit to the Champions League final against Spurs, and I'm gonna treat it like a final.
Oh yeah,
and I can see an early Salah goal.
Yeah,
and then a late last minute Darwin Núñez winner for absolute scenes.
That would be.
I am talking.
Is that the most scenes? Is that the most scenes?
That to me is the I've seen Darwin score some winners for us. I know,
Forest
the energy, energy that whenever I don't know what it is about him when he scores, and I was like, it is Origi-esque in that you're football without Darwin is nothing. Do you know what I mean? It's almost one of those moments, and for me that would be a dream scenario after all the shit he's had, because I must have watched the clip at silly o'clock this morning of the penalty misses, and it was like a little compilation of his mad moments, and I'm just thinking to myself, there's still one.
One more moment,
you know we said before about Jota, the combination of games, and then if it only happens once or twice, there's a bit of a question mark. It's the opposite for Darwin for me. There's still one. I can still see one magic moment in a Liverpool shirt for Darwin Núñez, and Spurs on the weekend would be no better time to go and do it.
Okay, interesting, Chris.
I'm trying to think of a way that I can match that or even better.
Joe Gomez.
I'm really torn.
Joe Gomez.
Yeah. I'm really torn between blowing Spurs out the water versus having a couple of weeks ago for Van Dijk.
West Ham,
that kind of moment.
It's felt like that's the form for us at the minute, though. It's going to be moments as opposed to blowing anyone out the water.
We complained about a lack of moments at one point a few weeks ago, and now we've had 2 and 2. So
yeah, exactly. I'm going to go just because I will get words out here. I'm going to go with something like 3-0 because I want the kind of celebration leading up to it.
Okay.
Because we've had the eruption the last few weeks. I want that kind of almost 10-15 minutes of just celebration. And one goal scorer that I'm going to throw into it because I think Gravenberch deserves some sort of moment.
Okay.
I'm going to throw.
That's a shout. That's a shout.
Yeah. Obviously, never scored Premier League goal at Anfield. I want to throw that in there, and even if it's the third or something, just to cap off how revolutionary he's been this season, I'm going to go...
Like a Fabinho moment.
Yeah.
Puts his foot
absolutely whacks it. I'm going to go Salah double to break his drought. And yeah, I'm going to throw Gravenberch there as a rogue third goal scorer.
Love that. Mine would be McAllister.
That would have been my wild card.
You need the lottery on tonight, by the way.
I think McAllister would be mine. But I'll say I think Liverpool win 3-0. Actually, I do. But if it is going to be tight, close, 1-1 late, McAllister winner would be just scenes, absolute scenes. Boss, so there's lots of other things to...
Do you know who'll fucking score it now? Simicast. He's just etched into some mad folklore.
That would be wild.
For the rest of the time.
His eyes lit up last week, didn't they?
Totally, but it's just a Simicast winner. It was on nobody's bingo card.
He's already got it with the FA Cup a little bit, hasn't he? He's got a little bit of that going on. No one said Chiesa. Interesting.
I just give him that one more appearance. Seriously, I'll actually be quite sad if he doesn't get it. Just because he wasn't even on the bench last week. And I was like, who do you take off the bench to then put him in?
But there's no fitness issues.
Just get him on it. If you're listening, just one more appearance. Whatever happens to him, summer happens. Just get him it, please.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. We will be back with watch along scenes, and I mean scenes as well, on Sunday, of course. Looking forward to it. We'll be here all day, potentially all night, but we'll wait and see what happens. And there's also stuff on Redmen Plus to catch your eye as well. The Oppo preview will be going out soon ahead of Liverpool against Tottenham. Yeah, we've got you covered. We have got you covered as ever. So come and join us live about an hour and a half before kick-off. We'll do team news, we'll do build-up, and then we'll do the watch-along. And then hopefully we'll be sticking around for a good few hours afterwards to do some post-match celebrations as well. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. Been a pleasure. Enjoy.
Calm before the storm, man.
Yes. Enjoy. The rest of you, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Take care. I'll see you soon.